"He's not the one for you, my daughter. Trust me, I can see right through him," my mother would say whenever I was getting ready to meet Arthur. Her voice was tired but firm, as if she wasn't just giving her opinion, but trying to save me from a disaster I couldn't yet see. I would just brush her words aside. It seemed to me that she was exaggerating, that her words were nothing more than a mother's typical jealousy, an unwillingness to let me go into my adult life. I'd catch myself thinking, how could anyone be against a man like him? Arthur was handsome and charismatic. He knew how to listen and always said exactly what you wanted to hear. Every time he showed up at our house, his confident walk and easy smile seemed to light up everything around him. He would hold the door, offer his hand, and give me flowers for no reason at all. For me, this was something new and special. I had never met a guy who was so skilled at making you feel like you were the center of the universe. That's what was so blinding. My mother's words were drowned out by the sweet melody of his promises. We often sat together in the kitchen in the evenings. She would put the kettle on, slice some bread, and begin her quiet but persistent talk. "You're too trusting. You don't yet know what kind of men are out there. I can see that he's not the one you need." "Mom, please stop," I'd interrupt, rolling my eyes. "You're never happy with anyone. Can't you see how much he cares about me? Didn't you hear him say he can't live without me?" My mother would sigh heavily and look somewhere past me. Her gaze was filled with a sadness mixed with anxiety. I would get angry. It felt like she was deliberately trying to ruin my happiness, not letting me breathe freely. Sometimes, I even thought she was just afraid of being left alone, that her words weren't about Arthur, but about her own fears. But deep down, a little worm of doubt always remained. It stirred whenever Arthur asked too insistently where I had been and with whom. It would rear its head when he would suddenly fall silent and become cold without any explanation. And yet, I stubbornly pushed those thoughts away. I believed that love was about fighting for a person, proof that I could stand by him despite everyone else's doubts. In my heart, I knew my mother didn't speak without reason. Her heart saw more than my eyes could. But I was too young then, too blinded by the attention to listen. I persisted in building my world on Arthur's beautiful words, his smiles, and the little things that seemed to me to be signs of true feeling. Now, remembering those evenings in the kitchen, I understand. My mother wasn't arguing with me. She was praying that I would see the light in time. But back then, I heard neither her anxiety nor her pain. I only saw myself, a girl who had finally been given a fairy tale. The first few months with Arthur felt like a true gift of fate. He literally swept me off my feet, just like in the romantic movies, and I felt like the heroine of a fairy tale. We would walk through the city in the evenings. He always held my hand, told me about his plans and dreams, and joked and teased me. He knew how to surprise me. One day, I came out of the university, and there he was at the entrance with a bouquet of daisies. Another time, he sent a courier to my door with a small box. Inside was a heart-shaped pendant. My friends were envious. "You're so lucky," they'd say. "You can't find men like that these days." And I believed it myself. His voice was confident and velvety. He always found the words to convince me that I was the meaning of his life. "You don't even understand what you mean to me. Without you, I'm empty," he would say, and I would melt. I had never met a guy who expressed his feelings so insistently and vividly. I thought this was what true love was. But over time, something about his attentiveness began to change. It stopped being light and easy and started turning into a burden. I noticed that he was asking too often where I'd been, who I'd met with, and why I hadn't answered the phone right away. At first, I just laughed. "Oh, you silly, jealous man." I even found it cute. But gradually, a tension started to creep into his words. If I was late after my classes, he might call me 10 times in a row. If I was sitting with friends at a cafe, he would definitely call and ask, "Who's with you? What are you talking about? Why is it so noisy?" Sometimes, he would show up at my apartment building unannounced, justifying it by saying he missed me and wanted to surprise me. Back then, I still saw it as a sign of his passion, but my mother would just shake her head. "That's not love, my daughter. That's control." And although it was starting to weigh on me, I kept finding excuses for him. Well, if he's jealous, it means he loves me, my friends insisted. And I tried to convince myself of the same thing. But somewhere deep inside, a feeling of anxiety was growing, which I suppressed with beautiful memories of his gifts and romantic words. The real blow came one evening in a small cafe. We were sitting at a table by the window. I was smiling, looking at the brightly lit storefronts. It was an ordinary evening, nothing special. A young, polite, and friendly waiter came over. He smiled at me as he took our order, nothing more than a professional smile. But Arthur suddenly tensed up. I saw his fingers clench into a fist on the table. He glared at the waiter as if the man had committed a mortal offense. When the waiter walked away, Arthur sharply grabbed my hand under the table, squeezing it so hard that it hurt. "If you ever look at anyone like that again," he hissed through clenched teeth, "you'll regret it." I was stunned. "Arthur, what are you doing?" He just smiled. "It's his job. Don't tell me what to do. I see everything. You think I'm going to let someone stare at you?" His eyes in that moment were alien, dark, and full of anger and suspicion. For the first time, I felt a real fear of him. This was not the romantic and caring guy I was used to. In front of me sat a man in whom a wild jealousy, aggression, and a desire to possess were raging. I tried to calm the situation, speaking softly, trying to change the subject, trying to smile. But inside, something had snapped. I walked home that evening with a heavy heart. His words, his tight grip on my hand, the malice in his eyes, I couldn't get them out of my head. At home, I sat by the window for a long time, staring into the darkness. My mother's words echoed in my head. "He's not the one for you." I remembered her gaze, her anxiety, and for the first time, I felt ashamed for not listening to her. I tried to justify Arthur's behavior. He just lost his temper. Everyone can be hot-headed sometimes. But I didn't believe it myself. The next day, he called and acted as if nothing had happened. He joked, whispered sweet nothings, and asked me out. And I gave in again. I wanted to believe in the illusion in the fairy tale he was so good at creating. But fear had already taken root inside me, a fear that was impossible to get rid of. As time went on, the tension in our relationship only grew. Arthur became more and more obsessive. If his attention once seemed romantic, now it was turning into a suffocating noose. He might suddenly appear at my university, lie in wait for me at the bus stop, or stand outside my building as if checking my every move. His jealousy turned into a constant interrogation. If I was even half an hour late, he would immediately call and demand an explanation. "Where were you? Why didn't you answer? Who are you with?" His voice would become harsh, with an authoritarian tone I hadn't noticed before. Sometimes, he would just breathe silently into the phone, as if listening for a man's voice in the background. I started to feel like I was losing myself. Meetings with friends became rare. He would cause a scene after every single one. Even a simple walk around the city aroused his suspicion. "Why were you gone so long? Why are you so dressed up?" I felt like I was living under a microscope, where any little thing could trigger an outburst. One night, after a long conversation that once again turned into a fight, he suddenly grabbed my arm. His fingers dug in so hard that I cried out in pain. Bright purple bruises were left on my skin. His face was contorted with rage, his eyes burning with a mad fire. "Don't you ever try to lie to me, you hear?" he almost whispered. In that moment, something inside me finally broke. I saw not a man in love, but a dangerous person for whom love was about power and control. I sat there, breathless with fear, thinking only one thing. Mom was right. Her words, which I had once dismissed, now sounded like a prophecy. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling. I was terrified to even think about a future with him. I imagined how one day this anger would turn into blows, into a real nightmare from which there would be no escape. That was when I first understood that I needed to run, as fast as I could. The next morning, I packed a bag in a hurry. My heart was pounding as if I were committing a crime. Every movement seemed loud. Every rustle reminded me that he could appear at any moment. My phone lay on the table, vibrating endlessly. Messages, calls, new notifications. He wrote, "Forgive me, I was wrong. I love you. You are mine forever." The words that once warmed me now sounded like a death sentence. I turned off the sound and rushed to leave. Outside, it felt like everyone was staring at me, that he could suddenly appear from around any corner. I walked quickly, almost running, and felt a panic rising inside me. But with every step away from the house where Arthur could find me, I also felt a sense of relief. When I reached my mother's apartment, my hands were trembling. I stood at the door, hesitating to knock. My whole childhood, I had argued with her, proving my independence, and now here I was, broken, scared, and burdened with my mistakes. The door opened. Mom came out into the hallway, and the moment she saw me, she understood everything. She didn't need words. My eyes, my tears, said more than any confession. I threw myself into her arms, hugging her tightly like I did when I was a child, and whispered, "Mom, you were right." She stroked my hair, and her arms were the only place on earth where I felt safe again. In that moment, I realized that a mother's heart sees things that we, blinded by our illusions, often fail to notice. Arthur tried to reach me for a long time after that. He wrote, he called, he stood under my windows, begging for another chance. But for me, it was all over. I no longer believed a single word, not a single smile. I saw that behind them hid only emptiness, anger, and the desire to possess. Now, looking back, I thank fate that I managed to leave in time, that I didn't let this story turn into a tragedy. And every time I hear my mom say quietly, "He's not the one for you," I know. I hear not reproach in her words, but love. The love that saved me.